Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2019 Education for Life Conference. Right now, I'm just testing the audio to make sure everything's good. Okay, everything sounds good. So we will begin shortly. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Huh?
come up from breakfast. The schedule got a little tight this morning, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity just to get to know each other and how you got here. So we do have online people. We're going to try to include them as much as we can. So we'll see what happens. So Alexander, you want to start? You just kind of maybe turn and introduce yourself to people.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I teach at Acton Academy. It's a new way of introducing knowledge to kids, and I'm considered a guide. And I'm from the Rockland area.
Great. Rockland's about an hour and a half from here? An hour.
Hour.
Yeah, okay. Great.
I am Annie, and I'm getting my master's in elementary education right now online, and I'm from Orange County.
Okay, great. How'd you find out about this?
Just through being in the village.
Okay, great.
I'm Joy, and I'm the preschool teacher here at Ananda Village. What are we saying?
That's it, that's fine.
I'm the dorm mom for the high school girls.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's important.
And someone left their water bottle.
Okay. Okay, Janet?
I'm Janet, and I'm from the village, and I just have to say I'm real interested in this because I was teaching for many years in the 80s and 90s children wilderness survival skills or the earth skills, and I didn't like the elementary school. I could tell a difference when I taught the children, and when I went to homeschools, I could tell a big difference. And also, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you went to elementary school. I couldn't stand it.
Janet taught our high school girls how to build a survival shelter out just in the woods. If you find yourself with nothing, you can make a nice little shelter. It's great.
I'm Bandu. I live in the village, and I better stand. And I talked me into being a tennis coach since we had tennis courts available last fall. Then at the middle of the school year, we lost the tennis courts. Then I had to improvise. Ping pong and badminton and soccer and basketball, and so I'm still here. Good, what's next?
Great.
My name is Nalani, and I taught mostly kindergarten through third grade here, sometimes as high as fifth grade.
For how many years?
Next year I'll be 40. My name is Pranjati. I'm working on the project in Assisi and Assisi and other schools that are opening while they're here.
Okay.
I'm Lee Labati, and I teach TK kindergarten class at Living Wisdom School in Palo Alto.
Great.
I'm Ashtar. I'm from Israel, and I'm mostly a science middle school teacher. And I've taken some EFL courses online, so I'm really excited to be here. Actually understand this very to my bone.
Hi, my nickname is Hazi, and I teach at the Living Wisdom High School in Palo Alto.
And where did you go to elementary school?
I went to the Palo Alto Elementary School. She taught me. She taught me how to write well.
So, yeah, the school's been around long enough that we're starting to recycle.
I'm Katie, and I actually work with Alex. We're at Acton Academy in Roseville. A lot of similar ideologies of working with the whole person. So excited to learn some new practical techniques to help them. And I'm working with mostly 3rd through about 6th grade. It's a multi-age studio.
How did you find out about the conference?
Actually, I've come here for a couple of retreats,
Uh-huh.
and I got to know Kiara.
Oh, okay.
So she, just talking with her,
Yeah.
realizing the similarities between the schools and wanting to dive into more.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and I'm working with Katie and Alex. I volunteer at Acton, teaching mindfulness at Katie's studio. So 3rd and 5th, I thought it was, but it's okay.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Hidayah, and I'm the I'm the director here at the Ananda Living Wisdom School in the Village.
Hi, I'm Aria. I'm not a teacher yet, but I applied to jobs to become an assistant teacher, so I just wanted, this would probably really help me.
What about your high school?
Where did you go to high school? I went to high school here in Trinidad.
Hi everyone, I'm Matthew. I've been a teacher in our Portland Living Wisdom School in the middle school for a little while now. I've taught all ages though through the years, and be transitioning back soon to the village to teach our 4th, 5th grade here. From Salt Lake City originally.
That's great. Thanks.
I'm Rose. I'm from the Portland Living Wisdom School, and I'm the co-director there, and then the lead teacher for the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade class.
Great.
Hi, I'm Erin. I live here in the village, and I will be teaching 2nd and 3rd grade next year.
What did you teach last year?
3rd grade.
Okay. Great.
I'm Maya Tree. I'm from Ananda, Dallas. We've got a little contingency here. And we don't have a school yet. But we have, a pretty good family ministry that we've been trying to incorporate these, principles in, and we're just so happy that this worked out when we're all here, that we could attend to absorb more. And Nitai's come many times, or at least 2 or 3 times, to help us out before, and we're just really grateful for all this.
So I'm Jyoti, and I've always been passionate about teaching children, and I've worked with Ananda kids a little bit in Dallas. And I think the moment I found out there is such a thing as Living Wisdom School, I told my team, let's start a school here. So now that we're all taking this together, you, myself, and my tree, maybe we will do that. That's the intention.
Okay.
I'm Hugh, Dallas Contingency. Yes, that's exactly the intention. I'm sure there's a place in the astral world where there is a Dallas school. We're trying to manifest it to the physical world. I've been a bilingual teacher in elementary school in the Dallas area for 15 years, and I would love to make the transition to the Bell.
Okay. Great. Nice to meet you here.
My name is Aria. Currently I live here at the village. I'm originally from Germany, and we are interested in starting a EFL school in Hawaii eventually. Right now I'm practicing here and helping at the school, and I'm just so super grateful to be here at this moment.
And say what you're practicing
yes.
for us.
I'm originally an occupational therapist, so we're doing some tutoring with the kids to incorporate some aspects that they didn't. Thank you.
Her Aria's materials include things like trampoline, these little carts that roll across the floor, and it's quite interesting watching her work with the kids and getting their attention to be able to stay focused while they have a lot of movement. Thanks.
I'm Radhika. I'm from Pune, India, and I'm not a teacher, but I would like to see how, because I think children should be taught from as a case, the teachings or meditation. So I'm very much interested in this topic, and I would like to share, if I can, through this school.
Okay, thank you. Nice to have you here.
Hi, I'm Moshimi. I'm also from Pune, from India. And Jyoti told me of the course, but so did Gorja. And Prisha had been very keen. She had told me that since you're going there, you should see whatever Nita is offering and you should try to take it. So we didn't have much time, but we said we'll have to at least attend one session. I think in future we are definitely looking to open a Living Wisdom School in India. So we don't know how things will go right now, but we're trying to absorb as much as we can.
Right.
Thank you so much for including us in your class.
Sure.
Hello, I'm Radhika. Lavanya from Pune. I'm mother of a 7th grader and 12th grader. So I just want to learn how it can be used for my son. If my son can come here, maybe in any grade from 8th, 9th, or go in university in US. So I just want to learn as a parent how it can be useful for my children. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
I'm Helen, and I'm the director of the Living Wisdom School in Palo Alto. And I've been there for about 22 years. And before that, at various places. And I've taught from little ones to big ones.
You'll hear more from Helen and Hridaya and Rose a little later this morning. And the gentleman there in the third row.
I'm Bala Rama. I teach here last year before we done today.
Thanks. Well, this young man here is.
My name is Aryavan. I went to the Living Wisdom School in Palo Alto from kindergarten through 8th grade. I taught for 4 years at the Living Wisdom High School here, and right now I'm shifting to India to try to bring EFL principles into public and private schools there.
Great. And then online, they can see us or hear us at least, and they can 1 o'clock at night. So that's what happens. So, pardon?
And one from China.
Oh yes. Okay, great. Got a copy. Various events happening. This morning, everything is here. This evening, we'll be going out to meditation retreat, which is about 5 miles up the road. And there's going to serve us a dinner, but they asked me to get a head count of how many people to cook for. So if you're going to be going up this afternoon, there'll be a dinner, and then there'll also be a movie by quite a well-known Italian, what do they call it, cinematographer. His name is Giacomo Campiati, and he's got connected with Education for Life and has his children in this. Well, I'm not sure if they're actually in the school. No. Anyway, he started to take the classes online with me, and I found out what he does. He makes inspiring movies about different inspirational people. And he's had this one on about one of the teachers who's famous in Italy, Alberto Manzi. And it's a really fascinating movie. So we're going to show that this evening too. But I need a show of hands of how many people are going to go up to the retreat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, great. Thank you. So the overview. So where is EFL now? So this is the beginning of our 48th year. And things have evolved. The first growth was on the west coast of the United States. Ananda Village has centers in Palo Alto and Portland and Seattle, and each of those places, a school came up because parents, and most, I think, let's see, no, it was a little bit different in Portland. Usha is here, she founded the Portland School. But usually it was 1 or 2 parents that just got really excited and really enthused and wanted to have something like this, and then they magnetized the teacher, and then things took off from there. Then, maybe about 10 years ago, there was interest in Assisi in Italy, where Ananda has another main center. And we started a school there that has gone through various form changes, and that's what Prem Jyoti is currently facilitating over there. And then in the last couple of years, we've started to see little branches shooting out in Europe, in Slovenia. There's one of the more established schools. They've been going about 8 years now, I think. They're going to come over, their older children are going to come over for a visit next April, so we're going to have some nice exchange with the children here. Then there's all this energy bubbling in India, and thanks to glad that you all are here for us. We don't know what form it's going to take, but something is trying to happen. Aryavan was started there about, 6 months ago, giving talks and things? Yeah, so that's been a big help. There's a lot of interest in the Pune area, which is kind of west central India, not too far from the ocean. But we also just started working with a group from Gurgaon, the Gurgaon area. If you're familiar with India, you know that the DLF group over there is quite a significant real estate conglomerate, and they also have a foundation, a philanthropic foundation, and they are in charge of 3 schools currently. And the leader of that foundation, who you might have seen, Pia Singh, she was here this week and she gave a couple of presentations, but she's very interested in moving those schools into an EFL orbit. We don't know how that's going to manifest. It's just a brand new idea. But probably from a year, the next time we have a conference like this, we'll have significant upgrade that way to see what happens. The principles of Education for Life are non-sectarian, I'll say it that way. They are just basic insights in how to work with children. The EFL does not have a monopoly on them. We simply try to articulate them as clearly as we can. There have been many EFL teachers throughout history. This man, Albert Manzi, if you see this movie tonight, you're going to say, oh, that's the way we would work. That's the way we would try to work with this. And he never heard of Education for Life, of course. He just was sensitive. He tried to tune in with what works with children. And but what we try to do is make it as clear as possible so that people can just, more than anything else, just feel, what's the word, enabled to jump in and know and do what their heart's telling them. And instead of being shy about it and saying, oh, well, gosh, I'm not sure if this is right, I don't know. Because education has gotten so far off base as a planetary phenomenon that the things that seem natural to you, or people are going to look at you and say, what are you doing? Like, one of the comments I get from people who come to become Education for Life teachers, if they've taught in public schools, a very common comment is, well, people used to criticize me for spending too much time with my kids. And I was like, you got criticized, you know, that's when I taught public school too for a year, and I know what they mean. People don't think in terms of spending time with the kids. People think of getting out of the campus as soon as possible to get away from the kids. So somebody who, like, one of the things that I did my first year in public schools, I might get arrested for this nowadays, but I started inviting the kids one-to-one to go on a trip with me on Saturdays, to go out and just go for a walk in the woods or go do something in the park. And I did it out of desperation because I wanted to know who these kids were. I wanted to know who I was working with. And I couldn't get to know them in the middle of the class because we had so many bodies in the classroom and stuff. And it was miraculous, which is why I kept doing it. I started out with one of my worst discipline problems in the class, the kid I was ready to strangle sometimes. And we went out and we spent a Saturday on a walk with my dog in the woods, and we came back on Monday, we were friends. We were friends the rest of the year. And he stopped being a discipline problem, and I thought, wow, that's impressive. I'm going to do this again. So we started with other kids, and we worked our way through the whole class that way. So basically, yeah, I'd hopefully empower you to just learn to follow your heart and your instincts of working with kids. We're going to work on a couple of things this morning, which to me are crucial. Let's see. So the genesis of Education for Life started in India in 1916 with Paramahansa Yogananda, who most of you are familiar with. He started his school there in a place called, well, originally it was Dahika, and then they moved to Ranchi, India. He only taught there for 4 years, and then he was called to America. However, he did set a pattern that we can look to and we can learn from. It was a different time, it was 100 years ago, and of course, the cultures have evolved in that time, but there's so many important things we can glean from that. He created a document called the Psychological Chart. This is, as far as I can tell, he did it in about 1920. trying to place it. He was still in touch with the school, but he was not physically there anymore. It was almost like he was sending back, some guidelines. And because I know it was after he came to the United States, because one little phrase in there, he says, "This is also for my American students." So it had to be after 1920. We do have it online at edforlife.org, and it's called the Psychological Chart, and it basically is an extremely in-depth analysis of a child from all different angles: psychological, physiological, etc. But I'm going to read a quotation in here, which to me is crucial. He says, he was working mainly with adolescents, so you would interpret it differently if you're working with children, but by analysis and introspection, the student learns to know himself through this chart, and the knowledge of how to improve will follow naturally. So to me, that's key, because by doing a very careful analysis, looking at yourself and understanding yourself. Yes?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. That the second part, though, is that the knowledge of how to improve will follow naturally. So the two are tied together. It's like, because we always ask, what do we do with the kids? How do we work with them? So he said, by analysis and introspection, the student learns to know himself through this chart, and the knowledge of how to improve will flow naturally. And then the second part, in order to know what he ought to be, we must first be acquainted with what he is. So in order to know what he ought to be, he must first be acquainted with what he is. So this turns modern education upside down. Because usually what you start with is a curriculum. And over the years, I talk about education for life. If I talk to people who are educators, almost inevitably, one of the first questions they ask me, well, what's your curriculum? And I tell them, that's not the right way to start this, because the child is the starting point. The curriculum comes later. There are curriculum things. Kids need to learn to read, they need to do math, they need different things. But if we start there, we start molding the child into a particular mindset. And we start to say, you should fit into this system in this particular way. And we lose the kid. We lose the child. They lose that inner sense of who they are. They start trying to fit in. Oh, I want to be a good reader so I can get butterflies on my papers. Or they're completely externalize their focus. And Education for Life is about starting from the inside and coming out. And it's a very difficult thing to learn, because the hypnosis of worldwide education is so strong that, the purpose of school is to impose is a little too harsh, but to implant in the child this particular set of things to learn. And, I know in India it's very strong. It's like there are these tests, and what's the purpose of school? The purpose of school is to pass these tests and to get a high score. And that's not education. You could call that deducation if you'd like to, but it's not education. It basically kills the spirit of the child. And you see this not only in India, you see it in the United States, you see it in Japan, you see it in Europe. It's all over the world. And it's so strange. Like, how did that happen? How did we get so far away from what the school should really be, which is encouraging and drawing out? I looked it up once, and I was trying to puzzle over this a long time ago. I looked up, where did education come from? It comes from, I think it's either Latin or Greek, I can't remember. Educare, right? How do you say it? Educere. Thank you. That's a little different than mine. But it means to draw out, to bring forth. And so somebody used to understand this, and then they got lost somewhere. And instead of to be imposed upon, implant. So what we're going to be working this morning is we're going to be trying to, just in a very practical way, look at what does this mean in terms of working with children. How do you begin? So there was, I also, if you could translate your Prem Jyoti, this is Prem Jyoti's business card that she picked up. She got this great quote, which I couldn't find the source for, but it's from J. Donald Walters, Swami Kriyananda.
Only understanding and respecting the nature of the child just as it is, one can help him arrive to the balance and to his true maturity.
Say it again now.
Only understanding and respecting the nature of the child just as he is, it is possible to help him arrive to balance and to his true maturity.
Now say it in Italian.
Solo comprendendo e rispettando la natura del bambino così come essa è, si può aiutarlo ad raggiungere l'equilibrio e la vera maturità.
Nice. So again, this is from the man that wrote Education for Life. You know, only by understanding and respecting the nature of the child can we get started. That's the starting point. Understanding and respecting the nature of the child, which means learning about the nature of the child. So, I mean, now there are different things that we can take from other traditions. Like one of the things I love from the Montessori tradition is that you go and meet the children before school starts. You either go to their home and meet them, or you invite them into the class with their family. And so the teacher has a chance to connect to this child before the first day of school, before all of a sudden, you know, all these different bodies arrive and you're trying to do crowd control. But you start with that link. And so Maria Montessori had many, many wonderful insights that we can draw on. So did Rudolf Steiner, had the same thing, many wonderful insights. And with EFL, we get to learn from everybody, so nothing's off limits. So we're going to the first thing we're going to start with is something that we call student snapshot. This is a extremely simplified version of the psychological chart. It's based on the psychological chart. I tried to get other people, I tried to get myself to use the psychological chart for many years, and I found that it was people wouldn't do the homework. They wouldn't sit down and spend enough time, and I include myself in that too. I have to apologize, but it was so comprehensive, and it was so many different things that I just couldn't get myself to do it all the time. So basically, over the years, we worked at how can we make this into something that people will actually use. So this is what we came up with. So let me pass these around. Thanks. Pardon?
Do you have a copy of the
psychological chart is online at edforlife.org. If you look at the, there's a category called resources, and that's what it starts. And I encourage you to go read it, because there's so many gems in there that you can look at. Great, thanks.
Sorry, can you repeat it? It's online where?
I don't have a whiteboard. edforlife.org. That's the main Education for Life website. Every school has its own website. This is kind of the comprehensive one. Thanks.
Everybody got one, right?
Okay. And the people online, I tried to send it to you, so I hope you guys have a copy. So this is the blank version. You have a student on a date, and then you... one of the things he says in the psychological chart is to have more than one person observe a child, so you can share your perspectives. You won't have the full version of what this child is, and you can learn by having somebody else talk it over with you. So I encourage you to, if you're going to implement this, to do it in tandem with other people. So it says, choose the factors that have the greatest influence on the student's behavior at this time. So the whole idea here is we're trying to find what Yogananda called the salient feature of the child. What is this core part of this child's being that everything else springs out of? Maybe you will get one thing, you might get a wider variety, but at least we're going to be trying to hone in on the central things, because often you'll see that some behaviors stem from something deeper inside, some more central concept, and then you can just start to go back to that central concept and work there and solve a lot of problems that otherwise you're taking one at a time and you get very spread out. And it says, in the central column, put a C for challenge, S for strength, or N for not important for each item. So just as you go through these areas on the left, the challenge means there's a need for support or healing. Strength means the area is an aid in moving forward on the road to maturity. Maturity was the key concept that J. Donald Walters focused on in the book, Education for Life. He's defined that's the direction we're trying to move with the children. First, we get to know the children, then where are we trying to go with them? And he said maturity. Maturity. And maturity, he defined as basically, he said, being able to relate appropriately to realities other than your own. Or, in other words, just expanded consciousness. We're basically trying to expand people's consciousness, and these are the things that are important. So on the left, you have 6 areas that are suggested to look at. Child's interests and activities. Their friendships, their spiritual sensitivity, their parent and family, and then there's a catch-all at the end for anything that didn't get covered. And again, these are all these things. They're just trying to move the energy in a certain way. If you find a different way of doing it that's better, feel free to use it. If you find a particular area of influence that's more important that's not listed here, add it. Then on the right side, a specific factor, we just try to write in what is the specific area we're talking about with this child. Their dietary habits, their restlessness, whatever it is, and you write it in there. So then that's the homework part of the course, the exercise. Then next is considering all the above influences, what's the key factor to address in supporting this student's progress? And you just do your best. You won't get it right all the time, but you'll at least start to hone in and you'll start to work with it. So, but it helps. It really helps. I found in my teaching over the years, it helped me so much if I could look at somebody and I could look at them and I could remind, almost like I gave them a middle name. I'd say, okay, George, competition. Because George is really a competitive kid. Everything he does, he's trying to, beat whoever else is there. And I would just carry that with me. Whenever I see George, it reminds me, oh yeah, competition. Okay, how does this come into play here? What can I do with him to help him in this area? It just centralizes what you're trying to do with them. The next 2 parts here get more into the EFL philosophy, which we're not going to cover in these 2 days, but the tools of maturity and the specific gravity or progressive development. But as you get into Education for Life, you can add those in. It just helps you give clues about how to work with it. But then here at the end it says, describe any action steps that should be considered. So this is when I was reading about what Yogananda said about once you have the knowledge, the how to improve will follow naturally. And I found that. Not all the time in the quickness that I wanted it to, but if I really got clear on what was the issue, ideas would start to come. Ideas are like, oh, well, we could do this. I'll use George again, with competition. I can just walk with him when we go out to PE, and we can just talk about competition and its joys and pains, and just bring that to the forefront of his mind before we get out in the field. Or I can reorganize the game so that the competition thing gets highlighted in some way. This was what we did. This one, we were playing Monopoly. It must have been raining or something. We were playing Monopoly inside, and so in Monopoly, of course, you're trying to catch all this money and property you're trying to collect and stuff like that. But then I told them beforehand, we're going to have a little bell. We're going to ring the bell every 10 minutes, and then you have to move one place. You have to move around the table, and you become a different. And so if you were really competitive when you were the blue man, all of a sudden you're the white person, and and so it was just a way to play with that competitive spirit and try to broaden it out. So anyway, but again, the key is that you will draw those ideas that fit your kids, and your thing is the clearer you get. So questions about this? Any? Yes. Uh-huh.
At the very beginning, you were saying something about it's sometimes helpful to have another person or something. Can you just say that again so I get it?
Yeah. I worked a lot with Irene Schulman. Some of you know her. She can't be here today. She was supposed to co-present with me this morning, but they have a family emergency they have to deal with. But we often worked with the same kids in different roles. But so every once in a while we just sit down together and we try to like do something like this. Like, what do you think in terms of their interests? I saw this child's. We'll get into some of those in a little bit. But so just getting another perspective, and I find helps me because she saw things I didn't see. I see things she didn't see. Yeah.
I just have a comment for this snapshot and also the development chart that's mentioned here, the progressive development chart. What happened for us in Hawaii when Irene brought them and we had a group of kids that we were working with for a spring camp, I was in this mindset of I need a curriculum, I need to know what we're doing, right? And to not have anything was kind of challenging. And once we started with these papers, we looked at every student and we found out, who they really are. And the minute we had that, it was like the best curriculum I could possibly have, because I really had the guidelines, to work with the kids. And as you said, all the ideas of what we can do, that just flowed in.
Tell them a little bit about the specific. So there was some kind of a biking thing, or something came out of it. What was it?
Well, we had a big community center, so it's a little bigger than this building here. And the whole school was going to have them there. So in the middle we had all these physical tools like bicycles, little rollers, we had, balls that kids could play with, all the physical stuff, including the trampoline. And then on the outside, a little bit like on that platform, we had more academic area where they could learn. And what we did is we would bring games that were academic and bring them into the playground. And so, for example, you would have some cards or some puzzle piece that you need to set together. So they had the puzzle piece over there, but they had to bring it onto the trampoline. So they had to move and use those vehicles and everything in order to do that. But it was chaotic because one person wants to drive, the other person wants to use the ball. And within no time, all we said is, we need help, we need a solution because there's going to be an accident if we continue. And they started to create a city. And now they have roads everywhere. They painted the roads with the chalk on the floor, and they had traffic signs. They had stores and gas stations, and then they needed a way to communicate. So they created a mailbox and letters, and started writing letters over there in the academic area and dropped them in the mailbox. And in the end, there were some kids that were breaking the rules all the time and didn't stop at the stop sign. So we ended with a driver's license. They had to create their own driver's license and made it, painted it and wrote it, and then once they got their driver's license, if they break the rules 3 times, they get their driver's license. And the kids started to help each other to follow by the rules and to have fun. And it was a total interactive.
And what you guys did is you created a reality out of their pre-existing reality. So they felt they were participating and watching this thing evolve naturally, rather than you walking in and saying, okay, we're going to have roads here, you're going to have this traffic, and it's like they're going, what? And it just, you lost that initial step. So it was a beautiful example.
It was, the youngest one was 4, and the oldest ones were 12.
And it was a camp?
It was a camp for, how long was it? Was it 2 days, 10 days? Either 7, let's say a week. I'm not exactly remember anymore. And we were 14 kids.
Yeah, I wrote up we have a teacher's manual called The Road to Maturity, and one of the stories I put in there was I had a very similar experience early on. I was supposed to be teaching social science to 2nd and 3rd graders, and they gave me a textbook I was supposed to use, and it was completely dry. You read the passage, you answer the questions at the end of the chapter. Everybody's dying in the classroom, and but by the grace of inspiration, we turned it around, and we had a very similar thing. We came up with, we created a post office, we created businesses, and the whole thing. And we were supposed to be learning about community. Well, we ended up living and creating community, and I'm sure they learned a zillion times more than just kind of studying it passively. So anyway, it's good. Any other comments or thoughts? Yes?
Can I share something from Sunday school yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. So, maybe I'll cut here so people. So yesterday I had Sunday school, and I didn't know how many kids we were going to have, and they were from all different places and all that. And so I had a general plan, and the first thing that happened is one of the oldest boys showed up with a lizard on his shirt. Great. How in the world am I going to get them to concentrate, because it was so magnetic? And so we were walking, and everybody was, some were a little scared of it, who had never held one or something like that. And then some wanted to hold it, and little, I want to hold it, I want to hold it, I want to hold it. So we stopped on the way. There was a shady, grassy area, and we stopped, and I said, okay, you sit down, and I want to tell you about lizards. Because when I was a little girl, I held a lot of lizards. You hold them in your hand and you pet their head. Their eyes were closed and you put them to sleep. And so one by one, I would take it and carefully and make it feel safe. And then they would pet it and it would fall asleep. And we'd give it to the next one. And I thought, okay, I'm not doing yoga postures. They were so quiet. They were so engaged. It's like it was given to me by the little lizard on his shirt. And so that following those gifts that come to us from them was way better than what I had planned.
But it takes courage to do that, because you're going there, what am I going to do? Okay. So the next part of this is we're going to break up into groups of, let's say 3 to 5 people in a group. I'm going to give you a student snapshot that, this is one of the things that Irene put together for us. There's, let's see, Reggie. She has a little picture of Reggie. There's William, Susie, and Maria. And she did the first part here of the, what are the aspects of this child's nature, which ones are more important, which ones are challenging. There's a little coding in the middle. And she did fill in the bottom part too about the ego-active things and the tools. And in your group, I want you guys to take one of these children and together try to say, what do you think could be the key factor in this child, looking at the outline of their behavior? And then, what are some action steps? And again, you don't know these particular kids personally, so you're going to have to be, theorizing. She told me that she actually based these on real people. These are real kids that went through the school that she, and we have a kind of so most of these kids graduated, like 5 or 6 years ago, so we kind of know what happened to them a little bit in their lives. But it's hopefully it'll be a really good exercise. I don't think you're in this one. You're not Maria, no. Yeah. Although, there are some overlaps here. Okay, so get your little groups together, and I'm going to come around and give you one of these to 3 to 5. Okay. The reason for that is you get more than 5, somebody stops talking, and if you get too few, you don't get the interactions. Okay, you guys going to be a group? Okay, so let me give you some of these Maria ones. Okay. Or you have a group back there?
Yes.
Okay. 3 of you? Okay. So you can have some Susies.
Okay.
For my group?
Yes. Yes, you can have some Williams. Okay.
Thank you.
Some extras.
I need one. I guess we have 5 in the group.
Okay.
Can I have one?
Who do you have?
Susie.
William sensitive, whatever. So William's strengths are strong tools are body and feeling, and he's challenged with will and intellect. The strongest area of influence is his personality of kindness, being empathetic, and always moving. And then was challenged with, well, here's an interesting thing with William. So with the friends area, he has many friends, likes everyone, and friendship is huge, meaning it's hugely important to him. But it was an area of challenge, so we all were kind of going, it's an area of challenge, what could that mean? And then when we read to the end here, we see that parents and family is also a challenge because he has somewhat controlling parents. So that was another little clue. And then getting to the very last thing, the challenge of being easily influenced by others. So then everyone shared, so this is a child who's really kind and open-hearted and maybe has boundary challenges, maybe is seeking to please others too much and kind of losing themselves, losing a sense of where they end and others begin, and vice versa. And how can we help that person assert more of an independence and feeling that what they have to say matters, and their opinions on things matter, and some great suggestions about once the person feels safe, because they're very sensitive, asking them to assert themselves, as in, what do you think we should do for PE today was one suggestion, or what should we do for this activity? Asking them for their opinion, since he's often feeling like he's imposed on by everyone else, and is happy to go along with that because it makes people happy and wants people to be happy because he's kind. So yeah.
Anybody else want to add?
Yeah, please add.
And another suggestion what we could do with him was to play music, because he likes to use his hands. And so I think what was the background for that? Was the rhythm came in there? What
He
is
liked to move. He liked to
So he could move, he has the movement, the rhythm, and the devotional aspects of his strength are in it. Yet it's an activity where he needs maybe more willpower, also some intellectual capacities, and so his strength and his weaknesses can be combined.
Yeah, just to expound on that a little bit further. Yeah, so he's an ego-active, expansive kid. So a kid with energy who's moving around, but is also like a helper. So is that kid that needs to be helped toward moving that helpful, expansive energy toward something specific.
Yeah, I like you're trying to build up his self-confidence, build up his sense of self.
Right. And another suggestion in regards to that is that he could sit in with a light shower to help him move up a little bit.
Okay, great. Did any other group have William? Well, good. Why don't you guys tell us what you did?
Well, we had a lot of similar ideas, I think, because friendship is such a huge part of who he is, and he's a feeling child, using that to help motivate him by partnering him with others, maybe partnering him with someone who's younger or needs a little extra help. Instead of, that challenge is being easily influenced by others, but giving him an opportunity to be of influence to others, kind of what you were saying, giving him an opportunity to assert his ideas or his independence and feel his own strength. So working with someone who's younger than him or needs that a little extra help. So it's he enjoys being friends and being friendly with others, and then using that to kind of help him develop his will or his intellect by partnering with others, or being a leader in a group activity, so that he can develop that more. And we noticed that he has sort of a devotional quality, like you were saying, very sensitive. So giving him opportunities to be of service to kind of take that expansive energy and just keep expanding it, maybe being the teacher's helper for the day, or like giving him, you know, special jobs within the classroom to feel that he can influence. Like, he doesn't just always have to be influenced by others, but that he, right, like, I know what you're saying, building his confidence and his independence, and like feeling, oh, I can make a contribution that's of myself, not just what other people are thinking or wanting.
Like you mentioned that it says on William's chart, in spiritual sensitivity, he is devotional, but there's an N there, which is it's not important at this point in his life. So the teacher sees that potential, that this is an area he could grow in. He's not activating it himself, but you could slip it in and see what happens. And just kind of, you know, if you think it's a good thing to experiment with, it might be a source of, in this case, building up his sense of who he is and self-confidence. So, okay, good. Did anybody else want to add anything from that group? Okay, great. Okay, who had Reggie? Two groups. Okay, let's start with your group. Tell us how you approach Reggie.
Okay, so Reggie, as far as interests and activities, didn't have any. His personality, he's genius, smart. Body, he's sickly. So that's a challenge. He has a lack of friends. Spiritual sensitivity.
Excuse me, Leila Bhatti. I'm going to hand these out. We were going to use them in a different way, but it's a summary, so you can read along with who William was, even if you didn't get it. So you just pass these out. Go ahead.
Should I keep this?
Yeah.
Parents and family, they're hands-off parenting, which we figured means that they don't put any limits, and they leave him to do what he wants. Other important
spiritual sensitivity.
Spiritual sensitivity is underdeveloped, so that's it says not important. And then other influences, he has a high carb diet, which to us meant a lot of sugar and pasta.
That's my guess.
Interesting, because the body was a strength, but he's sickly. Feelings was challenge. Will is a challenge for him. Intellect, obviously, a strength since he's genius smart. And specific gravity is egoactive, contractive. So he has lots of energy, but then probably if something goes wrong, he contracts. Maybe he becomes heavy, withdraws. Some of the things that we didn't talk about his key factor, but I would call him Reggie Smart, since he is a genius. Some of the things we came up with to help him was we were concerned about his physical state, the fact that he's sickly, but that is a strength. So have him drink lots of water. Connecting with him, I think you mentioned smoothies. You could have a fun activity of getting together, getting him a smoothie, getting him, to eat yummy fruits, those kinds of things. And since he is strong in body, team sports where he gets to interact with other kids, put him in a place where interacting is just the norm, so that he can build from that, since that seems to be a challenge for him. His intellect is high. He could teach others. If there's a way to connect with him and find out what his passion is, although Hazi was saying he might be a kid who's always on the computer, but there must be something. It's important to find out what sparks his interest, and then have him develop that and have him share that with others. And then again, kind of a leadership thing. Put him in a place where he can be a leader. Anything else that you might mention?
Last thing, I ended up hugging him a lot.
Always.
Because he's had hands-off parents and there's a challenge. So
I didn't hear what you said.
I just added, the last thing I added when we were talking, hug him a lot.
Yeah, and then I would have to add that find a way to physically connect with them. You can ask them, do you want a hug or do you want a high five? You know, or do you want fireworks handshake? You know, the bump. There's some way to physically connect. If he's a little boy, he might not go for a hug, or you might be surprised if you ask him, what do you want, high five or a hug? He might go for a hug.
That's a fascinating evolution of our culture. That there's so many different ways to interact now instead of just how do you do? Which was back in the 50s. That was the only way to do it.
Nitai,
Yeah.
can I ask a quick question from online just to clarify? Could you please clarify what N means? Is that there is no problem as well as no advantage with a particular trait?
It means that it's not important to the child in terms of how he directs his life. He doesn't pay attention to that. The teacher might see it as, there's something there is a potential there, but from the child's perspective, he doesn't even look at that.
Well, I guess I wanted to emphasize physical activity because, I think it's a little bit difficult to change diet habits since the parents are kind of running that, and the physical activity will bring more prana into his body, and so that will counteract some of the fact that he's so sickly, and the fact that he has no interest in activities, his heart's not really, there in anything. And physical activity gets the energy moving in the body, and it can get you excited. And so I just wanted to emphasize that aspect.
That's an excellent insight. Okay, you guys had?
Yes, we also have Archie, and so you guys have a lot of good things. And I have a background in social work, and this kind of gets in my social work self going. So because for me, the first thing that I would want to talk to the parents about hands-off parenting is maybe we need to get a checkup because to see where he's at physically, because to me that's the basis of how can he function. He's sickly, his diet, we're not so sure about it. If he's not interested because he's hungry, he's malnourished, that just strikes me. That would be probably we didn't necessarily say that as a group, but that stuck out to me. And also just looking at it like, these are some flags possibly. The diet, the not having interest, not having friends. It might be related to health or nutrition, but there might be some other issues going on, especially with the intellect being so high. So, not to say that I would diagnose a kid ever, but thinking of autism spectrum, or would there be a couple things on here that might maybe kind of point to that spectrum. So considering that his strengths are body and intellect, and actually that's back to that too, like it's awesome to think that he might need affection and want a hug, but if he's a kid that's having some issues with sensory things or anything, he might not want that. So I would think combining the body and intellect together, can you talk with him about nutrition? And that might help speak to his intellect. With the body, how does this make you feel in your body after you eat it? His parents might not be advising him. They might just here's some just packaged processed things, Lunchables and things like that. And he might not know that there are other things that he can eat. And so helping him realize, hey mom, I noticed when I eat this apple, I feel a lot better than when I eat the Lunchable. So also we talked about doing a cooking project at school just to help expose him to different foods and that he could try, and maybe talk with his parents about different options for lunches, and observing him to see, is he looking at other kids' food and maybe he's wanting something that another kid has that is not in his lunch. Also, I think you guys mentioned pairing him with a kid with a lighter energy or a higher energy, just to maybe help bring his up a little bit. Pardon?
William did.
Oh, you said that. I thought you were sorry, wrong kid.
Works for him both.
I think that's always a good idea. And also, this speaks to just knowing your kid and watching Reggie and seeing
You know, I noticed when I read that story, he really lit up when this part about the bulldozer came up or whatever, you know, just seemed like, oh, I noticed he was really watching those other kids when they were on the bikes or something, you know, just, you were watching that, he might not realize it, and he's, whatever's going on for him, did not want to make friends, so you're kind of helping encourage him in those areas where he seems more interested and gets more lit up. Did I forget?
One thing I didn't think of was with the hands-on parenting. I guess as parents not really involved with child. So I wonder if you guys ever look at
We can't hear over here.
that. The parents not involved with the child. I mean, it says hands-off parenting, so I didn't really know what that meant. And we were saying maybe that means the parents are not really involved with the child. I was wondering, does Education for Life ever? I guess we would have to, have the parent come and play and talk to them. So, because when it comes to
She's talking about parents' involvement. That's actually going to be a topic later this morning. How do you get parents involved?
Right, hands-off parenting to me can be interpreted in different ways, and it might mean that they're involved to a point, but they're not. They're more passive, and they're just letting him make his own choices. And well, that's what he likes, so he wants that. You know, he doesn't know.
Okay.
I'm showing you what a kid would be like in the classroom.
Yes.
Her body type and sluggish. Her friends, people pleaser. She wants to please her peers and friends, which is probably linked to that. She's trying to please everybody around her. Her parents and families are codependent, and bad experience with math in second grade, which that bad experience adds to that lack of confidence. So we were kind of stemming from, and so we really wanted to start there. We wanted to start there by focusing on her strength. Feeling is a strength, will is a challenge, and intellect is a strength. So we wanted to start with her strength in the singing, reading, drama. We have her kind of take on a leadership position, and she can maybe it's like the classroom does a play. Get them from, if they're here, you can't get them to jump there, right? So starting with smaller steps of for her, where she could, somebody that doesn't feel confident in that, then she can kind of show them, how she learned to sing or what she likes to do with acting. She's undeveloped in her spiritual sensitivity, so kind of how other people have touched on getting her connected with somebody that then has the energy that we're wanting her to then feel. For not being important for her poor diet, we were talking about how important diet is. And so even though it's not important to her, one of the things that she does love is to really, the school that I'm at, we're really project-based, hands-on learning focused. And so maybe she did say or something, and she got to go to the grocery store with her grocery list, kind of a thing. And so obviously Worth acting is very like student-led, and so her being able to take on how her diet could help her with that.
And actually, was because she likes singing, maybe they're in the role, but it's surrounded by other people.
Which would get, if she were put in charge of the library, perhaps with another partner, just giving her a little bit of responsibility along with a role.
We had up here, Mushi?
Oh, I was just curious, what does codependent mean? Parents and family.
They can't work without each other.
Yeah, you kind of lean on each other. You're kind of like two people leaning on each other, like for support in some way.
So she needs them and they need her.
Yeah. Not being able to stand up on your own.
I had a student similar to this, and thanks to Aria, I realized the importance of just getting students to move and how much that helps on all levels, and especially if body isn't a strength, but just getting them in their body. Like, it might not be a strength because maybe this student is kind of hypersensitive or hyposensitive, like they're just not getting enough physical input to feel that they're in their body and have any confidence. So like something really simple that we did was having students sit on exercise balls while they're doing their math. It made a huge difference in the students' ability to just be like present and engaged and finish their work, you know, and so something small like that, or just, you know, taking movement breaks, which can help the whole class, but that student in particular really needed it, so we're all going to do that. Or, you know, if she loves to read, instead of sitting on the floor and reading, or sitting at her desk and reading, sitting on the exercise ball, or sitting in the we have hammocks in our classroom, so that there's a little bit of movement input while she's doing something that she enjoys. It can really help, like, balance, you know. So you might think, oh well, we need to address, you know, her confidence in like, you can do it in kind of an indirect way, because the brain is, like, through the movement is making these really powerful connections. Thank you, Aria, for teaching me so much.
Yeah, and the younger the child, the more important that would be. Yes.
So what Katie and I, well, all of us found important was that it said not important, that she had had a bad experience with math in second grade. It might not be important to her because it hasn't surfaced that might have taken a toll on her confidence.
Yes.
And so in her studio where I go in with mindfulness, we've introduced tapping, EFT, and there's tons of things accessible online. You just play with them in the classroom with the points, and then expose them to, because she has the connection to the big overhead, right, and expose them to the videos, so they have that tool accessible in their hands when they go home. And then to work on their confidence. Well, her confidence, that was what we were talking about here, because that was what we identified as her core belief, which recently I do Psych K, so it addresses the core belief system. I've been taking students in one by one and working with them, and we could go directly in on the self-confidence, and then she could build it through the years.
Great.
Yes.
And as soon as they can own that this is something that's really helpful to them, then can just take off. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Everything we suggested is all in the classroom. And I would like to suggest taking your kids outside, because everything is on the mind. And take them to the park if you don't live in the wilderness. Take them to move in the water. Take them to a tree. Because the texture, the light, the sound, the ecosystem that's on a tree it's infinite. And you're feeling the grass, take their shoes off. It's all the textures, the light, the sound. If it's city buses, how many different sounds? Maybe they're not birds, maybe it's horns and brakes. But you're using your body and the world around you to identify and how many can you count and what do you feel when you connect and how many leaves can you see. Those to me would also help all the children that we've discussed get out of the brain and into feeling in the body. And I took my children to a state park and we were told to get out of the trees. My children climbed the trees. One, we were beautiful trees for climbing, but the range of it was too much of a liability. But to be, you go to the park of nature to experience it, but they couldn't touch it. And so that is the common problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Good input. Okay, well, I want to talk about Maria. Who is the Maria's group? Okay.
So Maria, her interest in activities was a strength. She enjoyed art, reading, and pottery. Her personality is a strength. She's quietly magnetic. And her body is not important. It's healthy. Her friends is a challenge. She's a leader of a clique, so that can be a challenge. Her spiritual sensitivity is a strength. She develops developing sense of consciousness, and her parents and family are not important. We clarified she has good parents, but they're not overly involved. Other important influences were not important. Originally it said homeschool, so not important for that. Her tools of maturity, so her body was a challenge, her feeling and will were strengths. and her intellect was a challenge. So working with relationships and using art and reading to help pull out her intellect. And it didn't say anything. It said that she's healthy. So for body, just making her feel comfortable in her own skin, doing activities such as going out in nature, working with others that aren't in her clique would all be things that would help her out. And she's ego active, which I'm still trying to understand what that chart flow is. Is there anything else I missed?
Because she has a
A
strong
little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry. Because she has a strong will to use, like for her body, things with a little challenge, things where she has, like something that she's striving for, that she can exert her will to, just do things with her body.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, we're going to take a little break right now. And,
I'm sorry, can I just make one comment about it?
Yeah.
It seems like this came up in our group, and some things that's not important, it's like, it's sort of odd, say your parents are not important. Rose came up with the word neutral. Like this is a neutral thing rather than not important.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a challenge or a strength.
Right,
It's
yeah, it's neutral.
Yeah, just kind of in between, yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. So we'll take about 10 minutes. Joy fixed us some banana bread.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back in a few minutes.
Everybody excited about that. The energy went.
Anyone have walnuts, maybe? Wow. Some walnuts, maybe?
This doesn't have any walnuts.
No, I need like. Do you need walnuts? Oh, my darling, that's so funny that you asked
I go for straight. You don't need that much. There's like 2 tablespoons. You get like 4 tablespoons.
So,
Parsnip.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes for this part of the morning. And we'll have another short break, and then we'll have our second major session. But I'd like you to kind of keep in the same groups that we were in previously. But now we're going to go to the second level, which is this is called the Integrated Curriculum Generator. It makes use of the curriculum categories from the Education for Life. There is a place for curriculum in Education for Life, but it comes at the end. And even if you look at the book, which these are for free because there is some bad typo in here that doesn't affect the book itself, but with a book like this, and the chapter is called Curriculum, and they spell curriculum CIRRICULUM. So we're trying to get rid of these, but the rest of the book makes sense. So anyway, in this book, there is a chapter on curriculum. It starts on page 170. So it's like there's 170 pages of stuff to do before you get to the curriculum. And as I said before, usually the curriculum is in the very, the first thing. And people, the curriculum is like this sacred thing to be worshipped. Okay, so we're gonna approach it from the perspective. Okay, we have these individual students now. So I did hand out the classroom sheet. There's a class snapshot that goes along with the student snapshot. The student snapshot is individual. The class snapshot is adding all of them in one page. So you now know at least one of your students pretty well. You've thought about either Reggie or whoever it was. You've tried to tune into what is this essence of this child's being. What motivates them? What's the thing that's going to unlock their potential? But now I want you to take it the next step. And in Education for Life, there are 6 curriculum categories, and these are on the left side, starting with personal development, understanding people, cooperation, self-expression and communication, Our Earth, Our Universe, and wholeness. And it just has a little guide question to kind of focus your thoughts on that. But I want you up at the top where it says core topic. I just want you to pick a topic that you think would be helpful to your students. Okay, something that fits. You've gotten to know your students a little bit. You've kind of analyzed. You've tried to pinpoint a couple of key topics for them. Put one of them up there because this is for your class, your particular class. And then just as a group, go through and just try to brainstorm. Well, what could we do that would broaden this topic? Because these are like spokes of a wheel going out, from the center. The core is, what is my student ready to learn? What are they ready to grow in? Now, let's look at it from these 6 big different angles. And of course, underneath, some of these are things like Our Earth, Our Universe, that encompasses most of the science things that would be in a lot of places. Understanding people encompasses a lot of the history things. Language arts is, of course, in the communication part. And just kind of put a few things out here and just see what happens. Just see what happens. These are the things that might happen in your classroom ahead of time, just to get the energy going. Is that clear? So you're starting from the individual, and now we're going out to apply these individual needs into a broader perspective. Okay?
We're using the individual that we received previously.
Yeah, and if you want to broaden it, you can look at that class shot and incorporate these other students that we went over today this morning. So you just enjoy it in your groups, same thing, just kind of do it as a little group process. You'll have about 15 minutes. What you need? I think I handed them all out to one of you.
Okay, I'm going to be testing the audio right now, so if you want to mute your stream so you don't hear me saying random testing like words, feel free. We'll be working in groups, and then I'll try to get audio also for the group that is speaking in the audience so that you can hear them better. So bear with me. Thank you so much. So, I'm basically just going to be saying Om. 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 On stage. Om. 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 Where's that? Without the mic, without the mic, without the mic. Internet seems to be going slower. Without the mic. Om, om, om. Om, om, om. I am going to read